I remember the first time she told me not to touch her. It wasn't angry or sharp, just calm, measured, like someone drawing a line they'd already practiced in their mind. The kind of don't that sounds final even though a part of you hopes it isn't. It happened in the back corner of the auto repair shop, the one with the flickering light and the smell of burnt oil that never quite goes away. She had brought in her car, an old silver Corolla with a dent on the rear bumper and a careful neatness to the rest. Everything about her was like that, controlled, deliberate, slightly worn but holding together better than it should. She said her name softly when she introduced herself, Nadia, and it felt too personal for the noise of wrenches and air compressors. Her voice carried the kind of tired confidence that made people listen without realizing why. I was new there, still learning how to keep my sleeves clean and my mouth shut around customers. When she asked if I could look at the dent, I nodded too fast and nearly dropped the clipboard. She didn't smile, but her eyes flickered with something like amusement before she looked away. While I inspected the bumper, she stood beside me. Not close, but close enough that I noticed the faint scent of jasmine mixed with gasoline. She was explaining what happened. A parking lot, too narrow, not my day, when I saw a bit of glass lodged near the taillight. I reached to brush it out, and, without thinking, my fingers almost grazed her hand as she steadied the car door. That's when she said it. "Don't touch me." Not harsh, just careful. I froze, hand midair, feeling the heat rise up the back of my neck. "Sorry," I said, the word small and useless. She turned her head, watching me with this steady kind of patience that didn't feel like judgment, more like she was giving me a choice, to step back or stay honest. I don't know why I said it, but I did. Maybe to save face, maybe to fill the silence that had grown too heavy between us. "Then let me touch your heart instead." She blinked, one slow, unreadable blink, and I wished I could take it back, wished I could crawl under the nearest car and never come out. The silence stretched, long enough that I could hear the ticking of a cooling engine and the muffled laugh of one of the other mechanics somewhere behind us. When she finally spoke, it wasn't what I expected. "You shouldn't say things you don't mean," she said quietly. Her gaze didn't soften, but it didn't turn away either. I wanted to tell her I hadn't meant it like that, except I wasn't sure that was true. There was something about her stillness, the way she carried herself, that made every word around her feel heavier. The rest of the inspection passed in awkward efficiency. She watched every move I made, and I found myself double-checking things I already knew. When she thanked me at the end, her tone was polite, distant, but her hand lingered on the clipboard for a fraction too long before she signed it. That night, I thought about that tiny hesitation more than I should have, about how her fingers almost brushed mine, how the air between us felt charged and uneasy, like static before rain. I told myself it was nothing, just a moment, a mistake, a misunderstanding. But the next morning, when I saw her car parked again outside the shop, same dent, same silver, my pulse kicked faster than it should have. And I realized, some lines aren't meant to be crossed. But some, once spoken aloud, start drawing you toward them anyway. She came back 2 weeks later, said the rear light was acting up again. I didn't believe her. The work I'd done was solid, and she knew it. But she stood there anyway, arms folded, sunglasses pushed up into her hair, pretending not to notice how I hesitated before wiping my hands on the rag. The shop was quieter that morning, the kind of slow day where the air feels heavy with things unsaid. My boss was in the office, the radio hummed low, and the smell of grease and coffee filled the space between us. "I think the wiring's loose," she said, handing me her keys without meeting my eyes. "I'll take a look," I answered, too casually, like I hadn't replayed our last conversation a dozen times since she'd left. She followed me around the back of the car again. Same corner, same uneven light. I crouched down to check the light assembly, and she leaned against the trunk, her arms still crossed, a shield she didn't seem to notice she was holding. Her silence pressed against me, but not unkindly. It was more like a pause she didn't know how to fill. "You don't trust my repairs?" I tried, half a joke. "I trust your work," she said after a beat. "Just not everything around it." Her voice cracked slightly on the last word, so faint I might have imagined it. I looked up, met her eyes for the first time that morning. They looked tired, not from lack of sleep, but from holding something in too long. I wanted to ask what she meant, but she turned away, pretending to inspect a row of dusty license plates nailed to the wall. She asked about the tools I used, the parts one ordered, things she didn't really care about. It was small talk pretending to be safe ground. And yet every time she spoke, I noticed something else, a small tremor when she laughed, a habit of touching her wedding ring even though the finger was bare now. While I tightened the wiring, she crouched beside me, maybe out of curiosity, maybe just to see what I was doing. Her sleeve brushed my arm lightly, a simple thing, but my hand stilled anyway. I could feel her noticing that I'd stopped. The air between us thickened. "Doesn't it bother you?" she asked suddenly. "What?" "Being around people all day, fixing what's broken, knowing you can't fix everything." Her voice was quieter now, fragile. I could hear something personal tucked inside the question, something she wasn't ready to name. I didn't answer right away. I just kept my head down, pretending to focus on the wiring. "Sometimes it's enough just to try," I said finally. She didn't respond, but I felt her watching me, not with curiosity, but with something closer to surrender. Like she wanted to believe that too. When I stood up, the taillight glowed red and steady. I gave a small nod, and she smiled, brief but real this time. It made her look younger for a second, not by years, but by something softer. As she turned to leave, I noticed a smudge of oil on her wrist. Before I could think, I reached out and wiped it off gently with my thumb. She froze, just like last time. But this time, she didn't say don't. She just looked at me, eyes uncertain, breath shallow, and then stepped back, as if remembering herself. "Thank you," she murmured. I watched her walk out of the shop, sunlight catching the edge of her hair. And for the rest of the day, my hand kept remembering the warmth of her skin, a warmth that didn't belong to me, but refused to fade. It was raining the night she came by again, not the soft kind, but the kind that hits the roof like a drum, making everything feel closer than it should. The shop was already closed. I'd stayed late, fixing an alternator that refused to behave, when I saw headlights pause outside, then fade. I almost didn't open the door, but then I heard her voice through the storm. "Sorry, I didn't know you were still here." Nadia stood there in a long coat, damp at the shoulders, hair curling slightly from the rain. She looked out of place, too composed for a setting full of noise and oil stains. She was holding a brown paper bag, as if that explained everything. "I brought food," she said, lifting it slightly. "You mentioned once you skip dinner when you work late." I hadn't realized she'd noticed that. We sat on overturned crates near the workbench, eating from small takeout boxes. The light above us flickered, humming softly, and the smell of sesame and machine oil hung in the air. She spoke about her job, the new boss, the exhaustion, how every email felt like a small performance. I listened more than I spoke. I always did. At one point, she laughed, a short, quiet sound that disappeared almost as soon as it arrived. It made me ache, how fleeting it was. "You ever feel like you're living two lives?" she asked, staring at the puddles reflecting the fluorescent light. "The one people see, and the one that never quite fits inside it." I didn't know how to answer, so I said the truth. "Every day." That earned me a look. Not pity, not curiosity, just connection. Real, immediate, unguarded. We fell silent. The kind of silence that isn't empty but full of things neither of us should say. The storm outside softened, leaving only the steady drip of rain from the gutters. Then her phone buzzed. She didn't look at it at first, but the sound broke something fragile. When she finally did, her shoulders stiffened. "Is it him?" I asked before I could stop myself. She hesitated, then nodded. "He still thinks he can fix things by calling. Like that erases what happened." Her voice trembled, barely noticeable, but enough to pull at something deep inside me. I wanted to reach out, to tell her she didn't owe anyone an explanation. But my hands stayed on my knees, gripping the edge of the crate hard enough to hurt. "I'm sorry," I said instead. "For what?" "For being here when he should have been." She looked at me then, really looked. Her eyes softened, and I saw the line she was trying to hold between us waver. For a second, it felt like the air changed, like gravity had shifted closer. I don't remember moving, but somehow we were inches apart. Her breath brushed against mine. Her fingers trembled where they rested on the table between us. If I'd reached out, I could have touched the raindrop sliding down her cheek. Then the phone buzzed again, louder this time. She exhaled, long and shaky, and pulled back. "I should go," she said quietly. I nodded, though I didn't want to. As she reached the door, she turned back. "You shouldn't wait for people who can't stay," she said. But she didn't look convinced. And when the door closed behind her, the rain started again, like the sky couldn't hold it in either. She came by on a Thursday evening. No storm this time, just a dry, heavy stillness that felt almost worse. The shop lights were dim, the others had gone home. I was sweeping near the back when I heard her voice. "You're still here." I didn't look up right away. "I could say the same to you." She walked in slowly, her heels soft against the concrete. There was something different about her posture. Not tired, exactly, but surrendered. Like she'd stopped pretending the distance between us made sense. "I couldn't sleep," she said. I drove without thinking. Her coat hung open, her hair slightly messy, a detail she would normally fix before speaking. It made her look more human, more reachable, and that was dangerous. For a while, she just stood there, watching me sweep. The sound of the broom was the only thing breaking the silence. Then she said quietly, "You make it hard to forget things I should have already let go." I set the broom down. "Is that a compliment or a problem?" "Both." She gave a soft, bitter laugh. Then her gaze shifted to the workbench, to the dented toolbox, to everything but me. "This," she gestured vaguely between us. "Whatever it is, it's starting to feel like something I can't explain." I stepped closer, careful not to close the space too quickly. "You don't have to explain it." "But I do," she said, her voice catching. "Because I can't keep pretending you're just someone fixing my car." That landed heavier than I expected. The kind of truth that strips the air bare. I wanted to say something, anything, but my throat felt locked. I'd imagined moments like this, but not like this. Not raw, not trembling, not standing on the edge of something neither of us were ready to name. She folded her arms, then unfolded them again, restless. "You're too young," she said softly, like she was trying to convince herself. "And I'm too," she stopped. "To everything." I smiled faintly. "You think I don't know that?" Her eyes flickered, surprised by my calm. "Then why do you keep looking at me like that?" I didn't answer. I just held her gaze. The silence stretched again, that familiar, unbearable quiet that carried everything we couldn't say. She looked at me the way people look at a fire they shouldn't touch, even as they step closer to it. "I don't want to hurt you," she whispered. "You already are," I said, and it came out gentler than I meant it to. That broke something in her. Her chin trembled just slightly before she looked away, blinking fast. I'd never seen her cry, not even a little, but I could feel the weight of the tears she was refusing to let fall. I wanted to reach out, just once, but the air between us was too fragile, too loaded. Touch would have ruined it, or maybe made it real. She stepped back toward the door, her voice quieter now. "You shouldn't wait for me to figure out what I've already ruined." "I'm not waiting," I said. "I'm just here." She paused in the doorway, not turning around this time. The faint hum of the fluorescent light filled the space between her silence and mine. Then she said, barely above a whisper, "That's exactly what scares me." And then she was gone, leaving me with the sound of the broom lying where I dropped it, and the ache of everything we hadn't said still hanging in the air. I hadn't seen her in over a week. The silence had stretched long enough that I almost convinced myself it was done, that whatever strange current had been running between us had burned itself out. Then one afternoon, she appeared again, standing at the entrance to the shop like someone who'd been debating whether to walk in at all. "I found something," she said, holding a small envelope. I wasn't sure if I should bring it. Her tone was quieter than usual, stripped of the polished confidence she wore like armor. I wiped my hands and motioned toward the office, the only part of the shop that didn't smell like oil or metal. She sat on the edge of the desk, turning the envelope over in her hands. Her fingers were trembling slightly. I could tell she wasn't here for the car this time. "It's a voicemail," she said, "from before the divorce." I thought I deleted it, but she trailed off, then let out a soft, humorless laugh. I guess I just didn't want to hear it again. I waited, not sure what to say. She pulled out her phone, pressed play, and set it between us on the desk. A man's voice filled the room, low, regretful, a little broken. He was apologizing for something that didn't sound fixable. Words like sorry, wish, should have blurred together. Nadia's expression didn't change much, but her throat moved, swallowing hard. When the recording ended, she let out a long breath that almost sounded like relief. I used to listen to that and think it meant something, she said. Now it just sounds like a man who ran out of courage. I didn't interrupt. I just watched the way her eyes went distant, as if she were standing somewhere else entirely, a place made of old promises and fading echoes. You remind me of him, she said suddenly. That made me look up. Of him, she nodded. Not how he treated me, just how he used to look at me, like I was someone he wanted to understand before he ruined it. I didn't know what to do with that, whether to feel honored or terrified. The air between us shifted again, the same invisible pull that kept finding us no matter how many times we tried to ignore it. I don't want you to become another ghost I can't stop remembering, she whispered. I stepped closer, careful, slow. Then don't. Her lips parted like she might answer, but her eyes filled first, not with tears exactly, but with something rawer. She pressed a hand to her mouth, shaking her head. I'm sorry, she said. You didn't ask for any of this. I wanted to tell her I did, that I'd been asking for it in every silence, every shared glance, every time she said my name like it meant more than it should. But I didn't, because something in her voice told me this wasn't a moment for wanting. So I just said, you don't have to apologize. She exhaled, looked at me like she was trying to memorize my face, and placed the envelope on the desk. Keep it, she said. Maybe you'll understand what I couldn't. Then she turned to leave. I called after her. I don't even know why, and she paused in the doorway, the faintest smile tugging at her lips. Be careful, she said. You look at people like they might save you. And then she was gone, leaving behind the faint echo of her voice on the phone, and a silence that felt heavier than any storm. She came by near closing again, but this time she didn't pretend to have a reason. The air outside was soft, pink with the last light of day. Inside, the shop hummed with a low quiet that made her footsteps sound louder than they should have. I didn't think you'd still talk to me, she said, leaning against the doorframe. I was hoping you'd come back, I admitted, without dressing it up. She looked tired, not in the way people get from lack of sleep, but in the way people do when they've been carrying something too long. Her hair was pinned back loosely. A few strands had escaped and framed her face. The simplicity of it, no pretense, no shield, hit harder than anything she could have said. I listened to the voicemail again, she said, and I realized it wasn't about him anymore. It was about me, about what I kept waiting for. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. I don't know what this is, she continued, gesturing vaguely between us. But it's the first thing that hasn't felt like waiting. The way she said it, quiet, steady, almost frightened, made the space between us hum. I took a slow step closer, not enough to close the distance, just enough to be in it with her. We don't have to name it, I said. Not everything that matters needs a title. She smiled, faint but real. You talk like someone twice your age. I've been around you too long. That earned a small laugh. Then silence again, the kind that doesn't ask to be filled. She moved to the workbench, sat on its edge, and ran her hand over the surface, the scratches, the stains, the history of it. I stood beside her, our shoulders almost touching. She didn't pull away this time. Do you ever think about how people find each other at the wrong time? She asked. Every day. Her eyes lifted to mine, a long, steady look that didn't need words. It wasn't a confession, not even a surrender. It was recognition. Two people who'd circled something fragile for too long finally stopping to face it. Outside, a car passed, its headlights washing briefly over us. In that fleeting light, I could see the fine lines near her eyes, the soft exhaustion that somehow made her beautiful. I wanted to remember her exactly like that, honest, unguarded, real. She reached out, slowly, and her hand brushed mine. Just the lightest contact, fingers grazing fingers. I didn't move, afraid even breath might break it. Then her hand turned, palm up, waiting. I placed mine over hers. Not holding, just resting. Like we were acknowledging something that had already happened long before either of us said it. For a long time, we stayed like that. The shop quiet, the evening deepening around us, the faint sound of a clock ticking somewhere in the distance. Finally, she whispered, "This can't last." I know, but neither of us let go. We sat there until the last trace of daylight slipped away, our joined hands the only thing still certain. It wasn't a promise, or a beginning, or even forgiveness. It was just the truth, the quiet kind that lives in the space between two people who finally stopped pretending not to feel. It's been 6 months since I last saw her. Sometimes I still catch the faint scent of jasmine on someone walking by, and my chest tightens before I can stop it. The shop hasn't changed much, same hum of tools, same squeak in the front door hinge, but something in me has. I still think about that night, the one where we just sat there in silence, our hands touching like two people afraid to move. I didn't see her again after that. No calls, no goodbyes, just a quiet understanding that we'd already said everything worth saying without words. For a while, I kept expecting her car to pull in again, maybe for an oil change or just another excuse to see if we were still the same. But she never came back. And strangely, that felt right. What we had wasn't meant to be lived in. It was meant to be remembered. Sometimes I catch myself wondering where she is now. Whether she still drives that old Corolla, or if she finally traded it in for something new. I wonder if she still listens to voicemails she shouldn't, or if she finally stopped waiting for people to fix what was never broken in the first place. As for me, I fix things differently now. Slower, more carefully. Like every bolt and wire deserves patience. I learned that some things don't need to be repaired. They just need to be understood. I think about how she used to watch me work, quiet, steady, as if every movement meant something. I didn't realize it then, but she taught me how to notice the quiet parts of people, the pauses, the way they look away when they're afraid of being seen. She once told me I looked at people like they might save me. Maybe she was right, but I think what she didn't realize was that for a little while, she did. What happened between us wasn't love in the way movies tell it. It wasn't neat or fair or built to last. It was two people finding honesty in a place that had no name for it. And maybe that's all love really is. Not something to keep, but something that changes the shape of how you see the world. I still keep that old envelope she left. Not because I need the voicemail, I deleted it months ago, but because it reminds me of the look on her face when she handed it to me. That tiny moment of trust. That's the part one carry. People come into your life, sometimes not to stay, but to show you where you've been holding on too tight. She did that for me. She showed me the beauty in what's unfinished, in what never fully resolves, but still leaves you softer than before. So if you're listening, whoever you are, wherever you are, maybe this is your sign. Not everything has to last forever to mean something. Sometimes, it's enough that it happened at all. And if you've ever had someone like that, someone who left quietly but left you better, tell me in the comments. I'll read every word.